Hey there, it's Katie Jarvis with Managing the Mess. I'm going to be talking today about encouraging positive behavior in your art class. Now, this is a topic that I've talked about before on my channel, way back when I started my channel, and I just made a monster video with tons of tips that you're not going to want to miss. I'm going to be sure to link it at the end of this video, but also in the description down below. Today, we're going to be talking about some different tips that I didn't cover in that video. The first one is that from the very first day of art for all my grade levels, I have seating charts. Now, I do know my students because I've been at this school for a few years, but if you don't know your students, I recommend just a boy, girl pattern. I try to distribute the students evenly among the desk or the tables in the room. Now, this helps to encourage positive behavior because they're not going to be distracted and talking to friends of their choice. It's just the random people that ended up at their table. And usually that creates a better mix that they can focus. Now, this also gives them a guide for when they come into your class. They know exactly where to sit. There's not confusion. There's not moving around and running and trying to get with friends at certain tables. Because I could see where if you didn't have things so organized with that seating chart, that could happen. You also have people's feelings getting hurt when, no one wants to sit with them and things like that. So just having it set and ready to go makes things a little bit easier for me. Now, I do this also for organization, and I do think that my students appreciate this and they see what this system is for. So where they sit on the seating chart, there is a number underneath the table. So my students aren't touching it or picking at it. It's just completely under the table on the legs of the table. Now that number is where they're going to line up on our number line at the end of art class. So again, that is already prearranged. So we're not pushing and shoving and trying to be the line leader and trying to be the caboose. I have them in my line order at the end of the class, not the classroom teacher's line order, because I don't know that order. I can't defend that order. I also use the numbers for their name tag labels. So I label all of their artwork with their seat number so that I'm able to quickly pass that back and have things ready to go from the moment that they walk in. Now, I don't change these seats because of that. I've got all those labels, I've got all the spots where people know exactly where to go, and I just don't mess with it throughout the year. Now, I do use these seating charts as an incentive. So I will set goals through the year for my students so that they can earn choosing where they get to sit. Because I've already established, hey, this is your required spot. It's something that I have some leverage with. So that's something you might want to consider too with making seating charts. So what I've been doing lately is we are working on yarn weaving. So maybe 2-3 weeks in, and each week we are setting a goal. And we have a chart, I have this over on Teachers Pay Teachers if you're interested, where we log how many inches, not the first week because, we're just learning, but starting the second week of how much they have woven. And we'll set a goal. So maybe the second day we're hoping that everybody has 3 inches done on their weaving by the end today. And then the next week we set a goal. We talk about it as a class. We'll set a certain number, like on the 3rd or 4th class. If you have 5 inches on your weaving, then you've demonstrated that you know what you're doing with your weaving and you can choose where you like. That could be sitting with a friend at another table. That could be sitting on the carpet. If you don't have 5 inches done on your weaving, then you will need to sit in the table that's closest to the front, and you can receive extra help from Mrs. Jarvis if you need it. So that really encourages them. Seeing that goal, seeing their weavings grow from week to week keeps them focused on what they need to do and then knowing they've got that fun incentive. Now, I don't do these assigned seats every single week. When I do some of my lessons, I set them up as centers. So students do have an opportunity to kind of mix and move around. And I think that keeps it fun and fresh. You can peek around on my channel. I do centers for glazing. I also do centers when I do my printmaking. So that allows students that opportunity to move around with friends. Also, at the end of every quarter, I have what I call a catch up and pickle day. On that day, students catch up on their work from the quarter that might not be finished, and then they are pickle. They get to pick and choose what they want to do. That's what's actually happening right now in my art room, hence the crazy mess behind me. But on this day, students, once they are pickles, they get to pick and choose and move around the art room and do the activity of their choice. I do think that you'll find that being organized really encourages your students to behave more. And I know it's a lot of work. This whole channel is about art room management, so make sure you peek around and find the resources here that you need to help you with this. But one thing I would highly recommend is be ready from the moment that your students enter into your art making space. So that means your material's ready, your lessons are ready, you're ready to greet students, and you've taught them the expectations so that they know how to come in without a lot of support from you or needing to correct them. If they're running in, if they're arguing about where they're going to sit, that's not the strongest start to the art class. You want to take care of these things if you can, from the very beginning of the school year, establishing what will happen, how will they come in, how will you start art class. Make sure that you're ready to start right away and that you have routines of how you're going to start them. Now, I have a whole video with routines that I teach at the beginning of the year, as well as one about how I start art. So just like that first 2-3 minutes of my art class, because it looks the same each and every week for me. And that gives my students a sense of calm because they know what to expect. I'm setting really high expectations because during my opening of art, we go over the rules each and every class. I'm very consistent with the routine. So every time we're coming in and starting, it's the same. Every time we're stopping for extra directions, it's the same. Every time we go to clean up, the signals and the words that I'm using are the same, so that things run smoothly and students are encouraged to kind of keep things moving in that direction. They see how things work and flow together. Now, another thing is with those name tag labels that I mentioned that I use for the artwork, that really helps me to be organized so that I can grade things very quickly and get it back. But also it helps me so I can quickly pass out artwork. I know that's a time when I was first starting out with teaching, before I had the seat numbers, where misbehavior would occur, where I'm slowly kind of passing things back to people, and some people had their art and they started rushing through the assignment, and some people were still sitting on the carpet waiting for the paper. So it kind of eliminates that I'm able to pass out papers very quickly because I already have the artwork in number order. I also have a whole system and a video for this about how to deal with students that are absent. There's a big chronic absence problem at my school. So I have students that are absent in every single class that I see all week, the whole school year, sadly. And I save paper and materials for them so that it's ready to go and I'm organized, and they're welcomed when they come back to my class as if they had been there, acknowledging that they weren't there, but saying, here you go, here's what you need for what we're doing. I also am able to, with these numbers, keep really good track of what artwork is missing. What do I still need to grade? So when it gets to the end of the quarter, I know who has free time and gets to pick, and who has work they need to catch up on. And I think that encourages students because they know they're going to be held accountable for finishing all of their assignments to earn that special free time. So when I was planning out this video, I asked my own daughter, how do I encourage positive behavior in my class? Because she is a student in one of my classes, and she simply stated that I do not let students get away with misbehaving. So they have to behave. Now, how I do this is I do set really clear rules and boundaries. I go over the rules each and every week at the start of class. So it's very calming, it's very comforting to students that they know what is expected. And the expectations are very high for everyone. Now, even though it's exhausting, I try my very best not to ignore misbehavior. Now, that is very hard to do because we're in a very short time frame for our classes. So if I find that there is something that I can't address, I will talk about it with the group at the end. So we might be like finishing up the class, I'm giving them their cleanup point, and I'll say, how do you think we did with cleaning up? Thumbs up, thumbs to the side, thumbs down. You know, I have my thumb to the side because I noticed, and then state what I saw. I noticed people were pushing and shoving at the sink. I know we were all hurried, but we're very lucky. We've got 4 sinks. We need to spread out. What is something else you could do at the sink to avoid pushing and shoving other people? And have the students work through that and set a goal for the next time. So you're not just letting them get away with that and think that that type of behavior is okay. Now, for individual students or the class, I'm giving warnings too as needed. Now, when I'm talking with my students, I am typically using calm, nice voice. I save my yelling for when it is truly needed. So when I do have to use a very authoritative, loud, strong teacher voice, let me tell you, everybody in that class stops and listens. And that's what you want. If you're constantly screeching and yelling and belittling students, they're very quickly going to learn to tune you out. And to some, it might just become a game. So I would save your yelling because there are going to be times when you need it. It's not something that should be your default. It should not be something that you're doing every single day when you're interacting with students. Now, I have 2 different management systems, one that's more geared towards the whole class and then another towards individuals. Now, for the whole class, I'm giving happy and sad points on a board when I'm catching them doing a good job or when I'm catching things that need a little bit of work. And I have a full video that breaks this down about my behavior management system. Now, some of what works for me that encourages students is they're seeing the points, they're getting that feedback. They know that when we get to 3 frowns, we're going to have silent art. And that silent art really acts as a reset. I do 5 minutes. It's on a separate timer that students can see. Students are still able to keep making their art, but this needs to be a silent, focused time. If they want to speak to me during this time, they have to raise their hands. I come over to that student and whisper with them about what is needed. If students are continuing to talk, I add on a minute for every time I have to stop and give a correction. If it gets beyond that, which thank goodness it hasn't this year, but let me tell you something, it happened a time or 2 last school year. We did shut down the art making then for that day. So that is options that you have, and students know that that's the progression and that's what's going to happen. You're going to see more positive behavior. Whatever happens in art with those points, with us taking 5 minutes of silent art, students know that each and every week I give an art support report, which is just a fancy little note that I pre-write out each and every week. And it has anything to do with things that the class is working on or an individual's behavior. Also, it has things like if someone goes to the clinic, if someone leaves early, that type of thing. It is not me tattling on the students. The classroom teachers don't have to do anything. It is just me letting them know how I handled things within my class. And just that piece of communication right there, that it happens every time, that they don't know what exactly is on that note, but I'm always handing over that piece of paper, is something that does really motivate my students to behave. That they know the classroom teacher and I are frequently communicating about the behavior and about what happens in art. I do have that form over on Teachers Pay Teachers if you want to check it out. It's something I've been using for most of my teaching, and classroom teachers really respond well to it. For individuals, I'm giving 3 warnings, the same as I would for the class, but these are directed just at one student. On the first warning, it's a free warning. On the second warning, to encourage them to turn their behavior around, that's when I'm noting that on my note to the classroom teacher. And I'm letting them know this student is working on, not shouting in the art room. I've talked to them twice today about this, and I'll let the student know that that's going to be on the note to the teacher. When it gets to the third warning, they're screaming again. This is when they are often moved and they go to a take a break spot. Now, if it gets to the point where they are having to be moved away from the class or materials have to be taken away, that is when I always contact home. So this is just a routine that they know this is going to happen. They know if somebody takes a break, But the next day, that kid's going to come in and say, Mrs. Jarvis told my family. And I'm very clear about that. And I just kind of go over it in a very generic way several times throughout the year so they know what will happen and they see me following through.